Good morning and welcome to this week's Jump discussion. This week we have, let's put it this way. This week, and we've been touching this on a topic in our newsletters, the brutal truth. So if you haven't sort of signed up to our newsletters, find us and sign up to our newsletter. Okay, but we'll talk about technology and how it will affect the industry down the line. So this week we're joined, as I said, by our latest recruit into Jump, Tim Stiles. Tim's got 20 years of IT, having worked with the likes of Commencia, and over the last 9 years, Tim has guided the Engage group through all aspects of their technology development, playing an integral role of their developing their sort of IT landscape to help them grow and scale and support. Technology stack is what we keep talking about. So I'd normally give some stats. However, I think it's very hard to give some stats about technology and how technology really works. So what we're going to do is I'm going to jump straight in. So Tim, welcome. Let's kick off. Paul's with us. So Paul's going to give us a little bit of his view of technology, which will be quite fun.
Abacus, I think, is about my knowledge. So.
Correct. So, Tim, let's sort of pick up with sort of like the company CRM and things like WhatsApp. With a lot of agencies looking to change their CRM. So what advice would you give on whether they should change, whether they not, and what would that sort of look like?
Well, I think there's always a temptation when looking at what other CRMs claim to do to consider whether changing is the right thing for the business. But unless you're using a very outdated CRM, it's rarely going to deliver anything like the benefit that you may be anticipating. And why am I saying that? Well, first of all, when businesses implement a new major system across their business, and for most businesses in recruitment, rarely is there anything more pervasive than a CRM. Their implementation, however well it's run, is a little bit like staggering over the finish line at the end of your first marathon. You're just glad it's over. And very often, a good implementation is considered to be one where you've pretty much got about the same functionality that your old system had. You might have lost a little bit of reporting because that had been developed over time, but you're just glad it's over. And I think what I would say to most businesses is you need to reevaluate the CRM you've already got, because the chances are, the provider of that CRM will have implemented new features, changes, dropped a little bit of AI in over the last 6 months, as many of them have done. And almost certainly, you're not using your existing CRM and its capabilities to the maximum benefit. And that actually you'll get far more benefit far quicker by actually reevaluating the software you've got, making sure that your staff know how to use it, that you're not trying to run processes that fight the way that the CRM provider has built the system to work, and that you're forcing people to go outside the system to do workarounds because your process says one thing and the software was designed to work in a different way.
I mean, I think Tim's said it brilliantly. I guess my analogy would be, if you are a bad driver in a beat-up old banger, you're going to be a bad driver in a Maserati. The fact is that, as you've just said, Tim, I think a lot of recruitment businesses fail to use their existing systems well. I think that's probably true, and we'll no doubt get to this around a whole range of IT, including LinkedIn, when we look at things like how to get the best out of LinkedIn licenses. But it is easy, I think, particularly when you go to these recruitment expos. There's one coming up shortly in Birmingham, we know, and you walk around the exhibitors and you see all these shiny new things and you think, well, that's amazing, that could transform my business. When the reality is, as you've just said, the expense and the time and the effort to bring it in is ultimately going to be a disappointing outcome, because using your existing system to its full extent and people aren't particularly well trained on it, or as you pointed out, the processes are lax, it's going to be exactly the same experience on this brand new shiny thing. So I would agree with you. I think it's about making sure that you're maxing out in your existing system before you consider upgrading.
So if we looked at that, go on, Tim, sorry.
I was just going to say, if there are features that you see when you're going around the expo or reading the emails that fill your inbox about the alternative systems, then speak to your existing provider, because most of these CRMs are in a form of arms race. One gets a feature that looks cool and seems to be resonating, then the other providers are going to look to put in something very similar into their product. So talk to your provider, see what they offer in that area, and you may well be surprised that you already have it, and more to the point, you're already paying for it.
Well, I think if we then move that, because I think that there's a bits I want to add on, but I'm going to ask the next question first before I start to sort of push back. If they are changing or simply enhancing what they already have, how do you ensure then you get the best investment out of the software that you are employing, whether that be new software or old software?
So I think the first thing is making sure that your staff know how to use the software and know how to operate it against the processes and procedures that you want the business to operate against. Now, I think it's harder than it's ever been to train people on software and to implement software. Nothing comes with a manual nowadays. It's go onto YouTube and watch some videos. When we're in a hybrid work situation, which many businesses have, you don't have the opportunity to lean on the person in the office who perhaps knows a little bit more than most of the others and say, how do I do this? So I think businesses need to work harder than ever to make sure that people know how to use the software. Otherwise, you'll end up with the situation, which I think we all know, which is that, for example, Excel is an incredibly powerful tool, and most users probably struggle to use more than about 5% of its capabilities because they're task driven. It's just want to do this, and as long as I can work out how to do the task at hand, I don't really have any knowledge of actually what the product can do in a wider sense, and thinking about how I can apply that to my work more generally and to take advantage of it.
I think if I could, sorry, Howard.
I was going to just jump in there before you jump in, Paul. Because I think what we preach very heavily is obviously a CRM first environment. And again, when lots of clients either come and talk to me about new systems and implementing a new system, new technology, or what we're doing on our old system, one of the first things I do is go back and be a real pain in the butt to your supplier and enhance your training on that, so people know what they're looking, because you might find it's quicker and faster if you actually start to enhance what they're trying to do. And I think your comment there about, is it, are you fighting against each other? Are your systems fighting against their systems? Are your processes fighting against the CRM process to make it sort of work? So something has to change to make sure it all works smoothly. And I think it's then getting people to go back. And one of the things that I've said to lots of people is, if you are changing, rather than change, spend 6 months on your current system, because you're going to have to update your system, update your data, update everything on there. So once they start to work the system and start to understand how the system works, you might find you don't have to change your system if you're getting there. But there are certain systems that we all know that are now old, antiquated, and need changing. But still that same process happens. It's getting people into the habit of actually using the system as it should be, and not just simply using it as a storage of data and never actually accessing that data.
I think just to add to that point, when you think about when induction programs in people we work with, for example, I think it's pretty widespread. One of the first things that we do with new people is show them how to use the CRM. It's often it's often in the first few days. It sometimes makes me wonder whether that is something that should be, in terms of their training around the CRM, delayed until they begin to understand what they're actually employed to do. Because often people with no recruitment experience, when you explain, well, this is what you do when you make a placement, this is how you code a candidate, blah, 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 they don't really know what you're talking about because you haven't trained them yet to be a recruitment consultant. So if you are going to train them in the early days, which clearly you need to do, I think it's as Tim was saying, you've got to go back, revisit, because as their knowledge expands, as they become more professional at what they're doing, they begin to grasp their tasks, their roles and responsibilities. Now the pennies are dropping, and I think you then got to go back and say, now you remember we spoke about this, let's go back over it again, over it again. And my last point about that would be that, and this is, I think, has been like this forever. I mean, ever since the 70s and 80s, when we first started using any kind of systems, people have regarded anything, any form of data storage as admin in inverted commas. You know, the old adage about we're sellers, not spellers, was what I used to get back in the day. I don't know. It's all admin. Don't want to do admin. I don't think even today that it's true to say that people understand the benefits of making sure that the CRM system is well oiled and works brilliantly, because if they did, they would use it far more often. And I think it's about not just training them how to use the system, but really getting them to understand the benefits of using it and how that benefits them, not just from the business perspective.
So let's sort of move on from the CRM. There's lots of things that are happening, outside of that from an AI technical point of view. And one of the things that's sort of quite prevalent a lot at the moment is WhatsApp. And it's a tool that lots and lots of consultants are using to communicate with candidates and clients. But obviously, WhatsApp is quite an interesting product in itself. So should a business be worried by this? And if they are, what can they do about it?
Well, I think they should be concerned if a lot of their business is now running on WhatsApp, and their consultants are using their own personal WhatsApp. We used to be worried about the CRM or content of the CRM disappearing out of the door when a consultant left. Now they've got all of their best candidates and clients on their personal WhatsApp. They don't need to attempt to copy the CRM anymore. But actually, I think there are dangers for the consultants and there are dangers for the organization. And Meta spent $1 billion or more on buying WhatsApp. They've said that it will always be free for personal, non-commercial use. So inevitably, they are going to look to a revenue stream from somewhere, and that revenue stream is going to come from commercial use. And their terms and conditions are very clear about not using it for commercial use. And I have no doubt that at some stage there will be a pushback and there will be an attempt to turn people who are using it for business use into paying licenses. But I think businesses have also got some fairly significant risks that they're exposed to by using a commercial grade application, particularly a messaging application for business use. We know that cyber criminals target those types of systems. There is data that's kept on there that you lose control of. But I think you've also got a situation where businesses have a duty of care to their shareholders, their clients, their partners, their employees about using secure devices and platforms, and systems like these consumer grade don't cover that. Work-life balance, I think, again, offers a risk to organizations that they could be seen by encouraging WhatsApp, even if it's not overt encouragement, that they are impacting employees, and potentially there could be some liability for causing workplace stress. And finally, there's an issue with liability if an employee's personal phone is stolen or lost, that data could potentially be exposed and loss of control. And there are plenty of alternatives to WhatsApp available for business use. It gives an opportunity for more visibility. One of the things that I always say to consultants is you don't want to be answering candidate and client WhatsApp messages when you're on holiday. So we should be using a system that allows our staff to take their leave and to know that others are managing their portfolio of clients and candidates as we would with a CRM. And again, going back to your comment, Paul, about the CRM containing up-to-date relevant information means that we can answer candidate and client problems and keep questions and keep things going if we have access to that data.
I mean, I think this has been a problem for some years now with people using LinkedIn, WhatsApp, other social media platforms. That the owners of those platforms are very clear that the content data that sits on your personal LinkedIn profile and indeed WhatsApp belongs to you, not the business. It's been tested in court. They're very firm about that. It's an issue for businesses where people leave, and as you've just said, they leave with the content, i.e. these are candidates or clients that they've gained information about, dealt with whilst in the employ of that organization, and it's a problem. And I think it accentuates the need to make sure that information is logged on the CRM, which does belong to the organization, does belong to the business. And I think, we know that making certain from a professional perspective that content is on the CRM. I mean, if a client calls and has already had a conversation or several conversations with the business and that information isn't on the CRM, the next person that takes the call is unaware of that information, and it makes you look pretty amateurish. It's irritating if you're a client and you've given information, you have to repeat yourself over and over. It doesn't look good. It's not a good look. So, I think it just accentuates the need to make sure the CRM is constantly updated, that people are, I guess, told they have to do it. It's not a question of if you'd like to. I mean, I'm not one for draconian rules in businesses, but I do think that this issue of making sure that information is logged and is always on CRM and it's not up for negotiation with people, it has to be done, is something I feel very strongly about. You have to protect your business.
So to move things forward, Paul, because obviously we've got an awful lot to talk about. Whilst we're moving from WhatsApp and sort of labeling WhatsApp, there's lots of other communication tools that we can use. But obviously there's a lot of CRMs that don't have that communication capability. Are you saying that what we should be doing is finding a communication tool that would then bolt into our CRM, or should bolt into our CRM, so then we're only in one place at one time, so everything comes out and back into our CRM, and therefore we can control the data? Because as you said, GDPR becomes a problem on certain things, etc. Is that what you're recommending, Tim?
I think so. I think you should be able to see all the communication between a candidate and the business in one place, and that place should be the CRM, whether they are communicating via a messaging system or SMS or email. It should be logged in there. If they've had a phone call, the notes should be against that candidate. That's about being candidate and customer centric. That's about being able, as Paul says, when a candidate then calls in, being able to deal with them with the knowledge of the previous interactions that they've had, rather than asking them to repeat everything they've said before because the person they spoke to last time isn't available.
So let's introduce into the topic then, obviously the thing that's hitting everybody at the moment, which is AIP debate and everything like that. And obviously part of WhatsApp is all part of that AI, because it's artificial intelligence and it's how you communicate with people like that. So how will AI affect small businesses, especially recruitment agencies, and even large businesses, as it starts to develop over the next sort of year, 18 months, 2 years?
That's a question. It was about 5-hour answer, that one, I think.
Easy, Paul.
Well, I think it's coming to every bit of software that people use. Microsoft, for example, a sprinkling Copilot into all of their Office 365 applications. It'll appear everywhere. Every recruitment business owner, consultant is being messaged and emailed by organizations who've released either an AI feature, or there's an extension that they can install into their web browser that uses AI and will suddenly open up a mass of candidates or clients that they've never been able to access before. So it is going to affect every business without any doubt, and it's going to happen faster than I think people would expect.
I mean, I think there's it's become a cliche, isn't it? Hasn't it now, that ChatGPT, which I think was officially launched last November, so it's less than a year in terms of its accessibility to the public, allegedly now has an IQ that's about the level of Einstein. So I think Einstein's IQ was in the region of 160, 180, and it's already there. So, you know, within a year, it'll have presumably doubled the level of his intellect, the most intelligent human being of all time. And I think the genie's out the bottle, basically. It's now there. It's not going to go away. And the rate of development of all these platforms, you mentioned Microsoft. I mean, we know that you've got Bing that's being developed even further, and I mean, there's various others coming out right now. And I think the fact is that it's out there now. And to you answer your question, Howard, what impact? It's going to be profound, not just in our industry, but I think across virtually every level of social interaction, both in our personal lives and in our business lives.
So I think the better stat on that, Paul, though, is I think it took Google 3 years to get to 1 million users. It took ChatGPT less than 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think I read somewhere 1 billion people used it in July, something extraordinary.
Something like that. So if we look at that, then obviously everyone's sat there, whether you're using Apple, whether you're using Microsoft, whatever you're using, there's some great browsers out there, and there's lots of extensions available for AI. Should people be using those? Because again, that's taking people outside of the CRM, et cetera, So should people be using those browser extensions to help them develop their business?
Well, my advice would be to be cautious about them, to do some due diligence before using them. Some of them are offering some great facilities. Again, I think you need to question your CRM provider, because it may be that there is some duplication there. But I think I would be cautious. I would be thinking about data security, the security of these extensions, perhaps the permissions that they're asking for. Very often they'll ask for access to either your Office 365 account or your G Suite account, and the permissions they very often ask for are quite wide. And even a simple look at the website for some of these products shows that they don't give an address where they operate from. The only way you can contact them is via email. They don't talk about security validation that they have done, and I'd be very cautious about allowing those systems access to my data.
There's lots of tools in there on that AI product that would be able to link into your LinkedIn profile, let's say, and then be able to send invites, etc., extract data. But obviously, it's the extraction of that data and putting it into another product that then is GDPR, etc. But obviously, if they're then controlling that data, and I know there's a lot of people that use certain products for extracting data out of LinkedIn and then start to mail people in, but they haven't got the permission of LinkedIn. And I've seen lots of people who've suddenly said, I've suddenly lost my 10,000 connections on LinkedIn because LinkedIn's locked my account down because I've been using a backdoor system to get in. And that happens quite a lot. So you're right, the due diligence on the actual technology needs to happen. So what do you need to consider then when using AI?
I think there's a few pieces, and it comes in a category that perhaps we're not always used to talking about, but we actually need to talk about AI ethics. And I think some of the things we need to be aware of, that AI it's not perfect. So it is capable of what's called hallucinations and false answers. So it's using a model very often to predict the next words. It doesn't have any true understanding of the content, and we need to be careful that there is human supervision of the output. We mustn't just become so excited about what it can do that we allow the AI to do all of those functions. We need to think about the training data that it might have used, that might have had some element of bias, and I think that's particularly true when we're starting to use it for some of the recruitment focused pieces, especially evaluating candidate applications, etc. And again, we need to make sure that there is an element of human eyes on what the AI is doing. IP and copyright infringement, some of the content either that we provide or that it's using. Fraud and abuse. As soon as you get something like this that's incredibly popular, criminals will turn their attention to it, and the opportunity to use it for poor purposes. And I think finally the fact of transparency and explainability. Can we understand the way that the AI is performing a particular task? So again, going back to using AI to evaluate candidate applications, do we know how it's doing that? And if we don't, can we be sure that it's applying the correct level of accuracy, that it's unbiased, and that we're not going to end up in a poor place?
I think actually there's some comfort in what you say here, Tim, because there's an awful lot of discussion around, will AI ultimately put paid to recruitment consultants? Will it put paid to the industry? Certainly my stock answer is that it won't replace, to the best of my knowledge, good quality human interaction. And I think your point about needing human supervision, needing to be the outputs need to be reviewed by people, and there needs to be some level of involvement and not just trust in these platforms is really great advice, because certainly at the moment they're very much in their infancy. My knowledge, listening to you about how these things are put together and things like bias and so forth is just forming. I don't know anything. Well, none of us know to sort of level the depth of detail that you do at this point, but I think it's certainly something that is useful, but to approach, as you say, with great caution. And even on a basic level, for example, people are constantly using ChatGPT now for putting together blogs and posts and compiling CVs and so forth, job adverts. You've got to go back. You've got to review the content. You've as a human being assess its suitability, even down to tiny things like the spelling, for example. So it's very useful, but it's not to be relied upon. That's been my advice at this point, and you've given me some comfort with your answer around that.
So I think from an old technical point of view, it goes back to a simple thing, isn't it? Which was, when I was a techie recruiter, we used to talk about GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. So again, I think it's the same with AI. If you're putting garbage into your AI, then you're likely to get garbage out. So that's the human element of it. But then you've got to review your AI of what's coming back. Is it actually giving back what you want by the questions that you ask? So you start to formulate the better questions to ask AI. Will it give you better information? Or as you say, I always question about candidate searching. How does it qualify from a bias point of view to make sure it's bringing a non-biased candidate back to you, et cetera, et cetera. So there's lots of things on there. So when we start to think about AI and implementing it into our businesses and into our business processes, where do we start?
I think firstly we start by being excited by what AI can do, and I don't want my talk about ethics to mean that I'm not incredibly excited about the potential, and people are already coming up with some fantastic use cases about taking advantage of being able to, for example, a really simple example of CV formatting, being able to provide a template, and AI will then format CVs faster than ever before, and then it's ready to review. But I think I would talk to businesses about starting with their data. I think one of the pieces that we're going to see going forward is, at the moment, we're using something like ChatGPT, which is a large language model that has been trained on a great deal of commercially available data. There's also obviously some copyrighted data in there, and we've been involved in actually training AI for years. If anybody remembers, regularly getting up those, can you pick all the pictures that have got fire hydrants in, or crosswalks, or bridges? Actually training AI machines. So we've been training that for a long while. One of the things that I think we're going to start seeing much sooner than perhaps we thought even 6 months or a year ago is the ability to start using these large language models over our own data sets and be able to do more with our own data, rather than, as we are at the moment, where we're going out to external information and we're looking at the way that ChatGPT has gone and looked at data globally. So starting to think about our own data, think about our data stores, machine learning, a subset of AI is going to actually start to give us real opportunity to start looking at our own data. So imagine a scenario where actually you can start looking at your candidate data and start to use machine learning to evaluate, for example, the impact of not responding to candidates within a timely fashion when they contact you, particularly when they apply. We can already start to see, and it's obvious bucket, but actually being able to back it up with real data has a real resonance to it. But actually, if you knew that failing to contact a candidate who applies to you within a certain amount of time decreased your chance of placing them by 50%, would that make you think about the way your business is set up in a different way? Would it make you start to see the importance of not just putting jobs out and then just dealing with the few candidates that you thought looked promising, but actually thinking about how you deal with the other candidates who are applying? So think about your own data and think about the value that you may be able to unlock in that data as more tools are available.
I mean, just to jump on that point, I mean, I share your excitement about the new technology. It's tinged with certain level of anxiety because I think that we need to, as you've just described very well, need to understand how to use it properly. But I think it's really what you said. I think to summarize, I think it's about understanding how you can utilize the new technology and its evolving development to support your ability to provide outstanding service to clients and candidates. And then I suppose, and I'd say your own people as well. I mean, it's making sure that you don't get too carried away with the overall technology, but keep in mind that the focus got to be, wherever we're utilizing it, how do we give an unbelievably good service, delighting our clients and candidates going forward using this new technology? And I think you make a great point. Certainly this issue of being able to tap in to the candidate database and get more from it is vitally important. It's certainly something that's topic of many of my conversations, because we know how expensive it is to use job boards, and they're becoming more expensive. We know how expensive it is to give our people professional LinkedIn licenses. They're very expensive. And yet we very often have the candidates that we want and we need to fill our roles already sitting on our candidate database. So how do we utilize, as you've just said, the new technology to engage our candidates, to our public, far more eloquently and in a compelling fashion to keep them close to our business, so that when we have opportunities, they're interested and we know who they are. And I think those are the important elements of how we use these new technologies going forward.
I think what it's about is it's about process optimization, isn't it? And yeah, what process could be done better by AI quicker and faster, that gives the consultant more time to spend speaking on the human element side, which is more of the important side from a recruitment point of view, and moving those things on. So as we're sort of running out of time, I think there's an area that I really want to touch on, because a lot of small agencies think that, you know, because their tech is cloud-based, or it's they've got a third-party vendor using it, that it's safe. And we know that you've recently done some excellent work with the REC on cybersecurity. So let's talk about sort of things like ransomware. Is ransomware still an issue for businesses, you know, especially in this day and age?
It certainly is, unfortunately. It's moved a long way from the adolescent boy sitting with his hood up in his parents' bedroom, parents' house, you know, trying to gain access to systems, and it's a lot of it is run by criminals now, and they are criminals who operate like businesses, and they are always evolving their techniques in a way to keep the money flow continuing, and to look for the opportunity to extract value from their activities. If you've got data in the cloud, you may think it's safe, but what they're looking for is, first of all, is to gain access to that. And very often I see organizations, they've got cloud computing software. The CEO or the business leader is given a high level of access because they've said that they need it. But that account actually can get extensive access to the data. And if that is compromised, it doesn't have to be the CEO's account, obviously, then the opportunity exists for the people who've got access to that to extract data that the business might not want out in the open world, data that they might have a responsibility for. So ransomware itself, locking your files, is only one part of the techniques that these organizations have to attack businesses nowadays.
Let's try put that into sort of layman's terms then. So if I said all my data's in the cloud, so I've got Microsoft, so all my data is with Microsoft, and let's say I've got, say, a Bullhorn or a Firefish or a Vincere, etc. So do agency owners need to worry about ransomware in actually control of the actual software? It's controlled by somebody else, or where is their data? Where should they need to worry about ransomware?
I think I'd probably say don't worry, but take some sensible steps. So first of all, let's talk about Microsoft or Google G Suite. They back up your data, but they back it up essentially for their purposes. So if one of their data centers has a major problem, they have the data backed up elsewhere. If criminals get access to your account, some of the things that they're doing nowadays is that they will remove previous versions of your documents, and then we know that something like OneDrive is usually syncing your documents to your local PC. They can be then encrypted, and access to them can be impacted. So think about the backups that you're running. There are plenty of companies offering very reasonable, low-cost backup of your Office 365 or your Google G Suite data, air-gapped, so it's separated from your normal account, and it's usually held on a form of media which can only be written to and not overwritten. So I would encourage everybody to look at their backups. I would talk to them about their admin accounts. Separate the accounts needed for administration of your Office 365 tenant, for example, from the account that you use every day as an individual user, so that you separate the two, and that you only use the admin account when you need to do administration. You're not saying these people have admin permissions and that's their standard account. And then the final piece, which I would implore every business to do, is to make sure that they have two-factor authentication turned on where it's available for the products that they use, where they're cloud-based. Whatever your business is, you should be enabling that.
So it's interesting, isn't it? That we're putting that responsibility now back into the business owner's sort of domain. And a lot of business owners on this call might be, a small business, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people, etc. And therefore they probably don't have outsourced their IT, etc. Should this be something they're pushing at their outsourced provider to say, how secure is my data? Have you got ransomware in? Have you got this in, etc.? Or is it something they should be doing at their end, in their office?
I think they should be asking the questions of their provider about the security that they've put in. They could probably be thinking about something like Cyber Essentials, which is a government scheme for checking the security of your implementation around your technology. It's relatively light touch, but it's an opportunity for you to validate that you've got a sensible configuration. And I know what you mean about, if you've got a relatively small number of employees, it could well be that one person has become the de facto IT person because they know just a little bit more than anybody else. I think it's worth just asking some fairly simple questions, and that's why I really do encourage people to look at the admin permissions and two-factor authentication.
I suppose that goes back into the conversation we had about WhatsApp and all those other communication tools. If they're out on their own, then it's on a limb. It's not part of your main systems, and then they're easy to hack into as well and to sort of push in from there. I've also heard something called cryptojacking.
Mm-hmm.
What is it, and should recruitment owners be concerned?
Well, it might be a new term to people. It's something that has really taken off in the last 12 months. It's a little bit of an unusual piece because it's to do with something called crypto mining, which again is a term that we're probably not overly familiar with. Essentially, it's about criminals looking to take over computers and use them for crypto mining, which takes an enormous amount of compute power, and they're trying to effectively get access to cryptocurrencies and to break the security around that. So what they're looking for is ways to take control of computers. And again, it's just the same as ransomware. It's people clicking on links in emails, attachments to emails that they shouldn't be trusting, and that allowing a criminal access to your network. And I think where this is particularly a challenge for business owners is those who have moved to the cloud, particularly those who've put all of their compute resource in the cloud, which is a very valid business strategy nowadays. Maybe you've got 2 or 3 small servers in a cloud environment, and those criminals are looking to get access to that to perhaps increase the computing power used, to use for their cryptojacking activities. There's a lot of terms there that people probably haven't.
So that's a new one on me, I have to say.
What you're saying is that they're trying to piggyback on your computing power rather than their own, and that will slow all your systems down, back your systems up. Well, not back, stack your systems up so they don't actually work. That's what you're basically saying, is that it's about their ability to log into your systems and use the power of your systems to carry on their cryptojacking process, which we know takes a massive amount of power.
Correct. And if you have online compute power and they can get access to your admin account, imagine that they can turn you from having 2 or 3 small servers in something like Microsoft Azure to they've now turned on 50, 100, 200 servers, and the first you know about it is when you get a great big bill from Microsoft.
From Microsoft. Yeah. So, do you have advice on small business owners? I know we've talked about IT backup and accounts, but user awareness and education on this, and business preparedness on this, because I think it's really important, because I think a lot of people are very naive about all of these things, and yet we must be receiving lots of emails every day that go into your junk, but some get past the junk. Open this email, have a look at this, we've sent you a receipt, is this, etc., etc., we've just refunded you some money, etc., etc. These are all things, aren't they, that allow you to open up, and it opens them into your system. So what, for education and business awareness, what would you suggest?
I would suggest to businesses that they don't see a ransomware attack or a cyber breach as being purely something that they will then turn around and look at their IT team to resolve, whether that's a member of staff or an outsourced IT provider. They can be assured that if they are attacked, their IT team will be doing all that they can to get the business back online. But one of the first things they may do would be to close all the accounts, disable, unplug servers until they can find out the extent of the infection. Therefore, what the business needs to do is to think about how can it make sure that when IT have done whatever they need to do to put systems back online and bring the business back into its technology, that there is still a business to come back to. How would they contact their staff, their key clients, some of their key candidates, if they lost access to their systems, if their email was compromised? So I think there's some things they can think about and go through what's called a tabletop exercise, where you effectively go through an example of the business has had a cyber breach, and now how can it react? How will it react to that over the course of the time that it's responding to and recovering from that cyber breach?
Some really interesting sort of comments and some really interesting things, about your CRM, be about AI, WhatsApp, etc., etc. And obviously that last piece there about ransomware, is quite an eye-opener for a lot of people, and it may scare people, but it's something they should be going away and talking to their IT people about, and it's something they should be talking about their staff about, not opening certain things, and be very aware of those sort of things, and be business prepared for that. So I've got one very quick last tongue-in-cheek question. AI and ChatGPT. We've been told for years and years and years that AI is going to kill recruitment. Is ChatGPT and AI, is it all that, and will it do that?
I don't think AI will take your job, but it's possible that somebody who knows how to use the AI might take your job.
That's a great answer. Yeah, I agree with that. And I come back to the earlier point, and we've been saying this for a long time now, that we're looking at all the inception of all this new technology, but it means that we have a chance as professional recruitment people to be more consultative with our clients and candidates going forward, really applying the human touch. If the robots are going to do the grunt work for us, great, but let's make sure we use that available time to develop better relationships, deep relationships with our clients and candidates.
So what we're saying is Skynet is coming for Arnold Schwarzenegger fans. Right. Tim, a brilliant session. I love talking about tech because it always sort of leads to so many more questions in my head and what we can do and how we can work. So thank you very much for your input. Paul, thanks for your input from there.
Thank you, everybody.
Ladies and gents, thanks for your time. Much appreciated. And we look forward to seeing you all again next week. Tim, Paul, everybody else, have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Bye now.